You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast.
You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. My name is Shawn Wilkie, and along with my awesome co-host, we interview the innovators in this space every week. I'm super stoked, actually all fired up for this week's episode. Ivan, please go ahead and get us started.
Hi, I'm Ivan Zach. Really excited to have a colleague of mine, Dr. Peter Brown. Dr. Brown is a native Washingtonian. Never heard that word before. That attended Washington State University for veterinary school. He is an experienced veterinarian with over 25 years in the mixed animal private practice. He co-owned a large veterinary practice north of Seattle for 2 decades. Currently, Peter Brown is president and founder of Cara Veterinary, a family of practices based in the Pacific Northwest. Peter finds having a customer-centric mindset has made all the difference in the profitability of his clinics. As he has led the Cara team, he strengthened his business knowledge, organizational skills, and project management skills. When Peter is not working, you can find him hanging out with his family, furry members included, and watching every Seattle Seahawks game. Peter, welcome to the show. Thank you for finding the time.
Yeah, thank you, Ivan and Shawn. Thanks for inviting me to come on today.
So you're building de novos, as I understand.
That is correct.
So what is differentiating? You said in the intro that you are focusing on customer centricity. How do you express that in the veterinary world, and how that differentiates you from others?
Ivan, when we look at the industry and we look at some of the changes going on with the industry of how pets are continuing to be more and more part of the family, we have found from talking to the pet parents, the clients that are out there, that they want a hand holding through this experience. And so not a drop off, not a curbside. And obviously we had issues during the pandemic just from a health standpoint. But as pets become more and more family, the client wants to be really involved with that care and have a concierge type service. And so as we've looked at opportunities in the industry, we focus on a concierge. We want more time with our clients. We want to be able to answer those questions.
That's fascinating, Peter. So, Peter, when I remember when we met at the vet forum in Nashville, and we were chatting. I was talking to you about Takatu. You were excited about that, and then you got me really excited about your approach to finding staff. And we're not here to give all your trade secrets away, but this is a challenge across the industry. How have you addressed it at Cara?
So I think the first thing is, how do we look at our industry, our profession? What are those talents that make a difference? There's obviously, as a doctor, I need to be able to do medicine. I need to be able to do surgery. There's certainly training. There's years of school. We can't flip a switch and all of a sudden increase our number of doctors out there. But a lot of our talent and our need within our hospitals is around hospitality. It's around customer experience. One of my favorite sayings is, I can't do what's best for the pet if the client doesn't say yes. So how do we engage with a client to enable us to do what's best for the pet? And that's a different skill set than you go to vet school for, or technician school for, or what's traditionally thought of amongst the veterinary assistants out there. It's all around hospitality. So when we look at the industry, I can't go make more doctors. I can't go make more LVTs or RVTs. But there's an opportunity for me to hire hospitality into the industry and then teach them about the flea life cycle, different parasiticides, the need for blood work. But it's very hard to train and teach hospitality.
So that's brilliant. I was just recently on a Disney cruise, and that's my second time. And when I'm there, like, I'm not that much excited about Mickey anymore. But when you look at the background technology, the little detail that make it smooth, like even like offboarding the ship and onboarding the ship with like 5,000 people on it, it's just an incredible how everything is seamless. And then I have this example that we actually trying to call it at Galaxy. We call it a provide a Ritz-Carlton experience. I remember I was in this conference where 2 doctors sitting and listening to some CE. I'm sitting behind, and they're talking about how he checked into Ritz-Carlton Hotel, and they asked him if he wanted the same pillow that he used, the same type of pillow that he used in Sydney, Australia when he stayed there. So they're at this conference and they're not talking about conference. They're not talking about surgery. They're talking about hotel experience. So that makes so much sense. How do you recruit and how do you find? Do you look at hospitality? Do you look and you stay and then you steal people from there? How do you go so specific about finding employees?
Yeah, great question. My first comment on that before I answer that is like, why can't that same experience happen in the vet clinic? Why can't we say you walk in, you're like, you were in exam room 3 last time. Was that the right look and feel for you? Would you like to go back to that same exam room? Right. I mean, not direct parallels, but like that's the
But that's
level
what they
of
do. They
customer
collect all
experience
that data.
that we need to do.
Yeah, they collect all the data, they remember, and they ask the same question. It's just brilliant. Yeah.
So yes, we do look at the hospitality industry, whether it's restaurants, the hotel industry, baristas out there. Thankfully, and I don't know the exact percentage on this, but 50-60% of every kindergartner wants to be a veterinarian, right? So there's this like, there is a lot of 18 to 26-year-olds that wanted to be veterinarians growing up, still kind of wanted to be a veterinarian, either for whatever reason, never went to vet school, didn't really know that was a path for them. And so as we look at their passion about pets, right, which is, we are a pet industry, so you need to have somebody that is passionate about pets, but they don't necessarily know this is an opportunity for them without going to school for years and years. So reaching out to individuals of, do you want an experience in the pet industry, and do you want to make a difference for the dogs and cats out there in the Seattle area, and we have this opportunity for you to go do this, because there's this passion about pets behind them, but they also have a talent around people. And so finding those, we have been blown away with the number of applicants that come through with just targeting those segment of the industry, because a lot of them are working in a restaurant because they can make money. It's not necessarily a purpose for them. It's not something that gets them all excited to go to work every day. But when we present an opportunity for them to be in the pet field, they're excited about that because it fills a purpose.
It's so fascinating, and I'm still it still like resonates with me. And I've actually had the opposite experience. So I talked to you lately, Peter. We've been hiring veterinary technicians for a new offering that we have called Verify by Talkatoo. And it's been fascinating for me to see these veterinary technicians come in that were about to leave the industry. They were looking for any path that they could find out of being in the clinic for various reasons. So we gave them a path to be able to work at home in their PJs, and they're super excited about it. And the thing that shocked me is the work ethic and the type of work that they're used to. And so I would imagine there's a parallel there, right? The hospitality industry, the shifts times are crazy. It's evenings, weekends are your busiest times. You're used to doing 15 things at once. How are these people when they come into practice? Obviously, they're missing a bunch of skills, and we talked about that as well. And I'd be interested to hear how you kind of acclimate them to the new world. But what are the big differences that you notice from, like, say, hiring somebody from the vet industry?
There's a lot of interesting elements of what you just brought up. So I think there's one is they love being part of a team, right? And there's a really of a team, and we are the doctors part of the team. We're not a very hierarchical type organization within our hospitals. There's a lot of collaboration because our doctors realize they can't do their job without a great assistant, a great technician, a great team there around them. So there's a lot of collaboration. We involve the medicine and the why a lot. Most people find this fascinating to learn, why are we recommending blood work? Why do we do pre-anesthetic blood panels? Why do we do heartworm testing? All these sorts of things, and understanding the why. So they get involved with the medicine, which satisfies a lot of intellectual curiosity. And we have a lot of engagement with the doctor talent, with the new talent coming in, and there's a lot of collaboration. So the biggest feedback we get from this is the excitement to learn and the intellectual curiosity that's satisfied. In addition to that strong team effort. It doesn't happen by accident, right? I mean, there's a conscious effort through that, and it's not always perfect either, right? I mean, obviously we have 9 hospitals now, and soon to be 10, and it certainly functions better in some hospitals than others, but it's a continual striving effort for us to really engage the team in all aspects and really think of it as I'm a big sports guy, but think of it as like a football analogy where it only works if everybody does their job, right? That play is only successful, that game is only successful, and everybody has different roles, but they're all very critical through that. And some of that comes from hiring doctor talent that understands that too. Most doctors of veterinary medicine are amazing, but some have different approaches to what does that teamwork look like. And so even from how we recruit doctors that want to come into this environment is critical aspect of this. If they're coming in where they're used to very hierarchical dictation, everything runs to the doctor, I'm in charge of everything, it sometimes can be break down and be not very functional through that. So you really have to recruit the technicians and the doctors into this environment also.
You're mostly located in Seattle and in the area.
Yes.
And I assume that you can steal a lot of Starbucks employees there.
Yeah.
And then, but I'm just thinking of different professions that you can find. So there's maybe, coffee shop people and barista. Then there's McDonald's, which I think that, that's a process driven organization. There's like, well, even Starbucks as well, but historically McDonald's is like that improvement on, this is a operational excellence gain.
Right.
And then hotels, and then I don't know how much process driven they are. They're customer service oriented. Who do you find? Because knowing our hospitals, I mean, you have an advantage of de novo, so you can set the processes similarly that will be sort of dialed in. Do you find a shocker of people that are coming from, not very high positions, but in a very structured environment coming into the hospitals, or you're also process driven and structured, so they fit right in? Do people have that sort of, okay, there's less process here, or you have the process that just takes them in and they're comfortable in it?
Yeah, it's interesting. I've never actually thought about it exactly that way. I guess stepping back a little bit of like our most recent hire, we just opened up on Mercer Island there in Seattle. We had our grand opening celebration last night. The team that we hired there was a mixture of experience, had industry experience. About 50% of the team had industry experience. About 50% came directly from hospitality, and that was on purpose. We really wanted a little bit of a combination through that. And then we just focused on purely their talent, not necessarily their experience. And so a McDonald's person who's happy, is doing a great job, and is friendly and is smiling and does all that, can actually fit into this environment extremely well. My finding is people that are too process driven don't necessarily perform 100% well within our hospitals, because we have to have flexibility. We have to have that concierge type service. What does that pet and that client need in that moment? It can't be a check the box. Oh, this person walks in, this is what you do, this is what you do. We have to be nimble through that, and really reads people's body language, read their expressions. How do you connect with the 60-year-old guy comes in folding his hands and like, how much is this going to cost today, versus the young couple in where there's tears coming down their face because they're worried about their first child and what's happening? How do you adapt to all these unique situations? Because every one of those moments is critical, right? And how do we adapt to that moment? There has to be process, right? There's an element of this that always occurs, right? People need to get their services, they need to get their reminders done, they need to get invoiced, they need to collect payment. We like to have a lot of like, read the moment, make that moment impactful. And it's a trading element that we do, because I don't know if that moment, maybe that critical moment in that day of that person's life. I think we underestimate sometimes the role pets have in people's lives, and we don't know what that moment's going on. And so how do we recognize that? And how do we create an environment where if I have a team member that needs to sit down for an hour and a half with a client and talk about what's going on, I want that ability to do that. And if you become too processed, it's like, oh, if they're not out within 20 minutes, I'm moving on. That's not what our clientele want.
You're so passionate about this, Peter. It's just like, it's awesome. So a couple of things that kind of totally clicked in my mind as you were speaking. One is, what is the cross-pollination like from a skill set perspective? So you're right, like, hospitality people talk about reading the room, reading the people that are in front of them, knowing when to ask, knowing when to walk away, knowing when to come back. Like, these are big lifetime skills that one acquires through working in the restaurant or hotel industry that not every veterinary professional has. Some do, some don't. But if you've got all of these, high EQ people and high IQ people coming together, do you see cross-pollination in your hospital? And I guess that must be just magic if you do.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely do. I think there's times when it works really well. There's times where it doesn't. And there's times that we are not the right fit for everybody. There are some people that don't appreciate and understand the importance of EQ. Sometimes it just doesn't work. There's times it doesn't. But it is beautiful when there is that cross. And like I said earlier, this whole idea of like, we are in the ultimate people business. Our end user of our product, our service, doesn't make the decision to come to us, does not drive to our hospitals, doesn't have a credit card in its paw sitting on the bench saying, "Fix me, Dr. Brown," right? They come attached to a person. And so even if our whole focus is take care of a dog and a cat, take care of our pets, we can't do it without the person. Now, that doesn't click for everybody, but most veterinarians are like, yeah, like even if that's not my strength, I want an Ashley sitting next to me that's her strength, because that ultimately enables me to do my job better. And some of it just comes by example of them seeing this. And it is beautiful when it all works.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, the obvious question is, have you taken a veterinarian in with the bad personality or the not much compassion or EQ and injected them into an environment where you have all of these passionate customer service centric people and seen a positive change? Has that happened yet?
Yeah, I would say if it's a bell-shaped curve, and you're really far off on the one end where there's a lot of bad behavior and you're like, I hope I never talk to a client, and I have not seen those move. Where I've seen
That's
some
usually
a little more to the middle of like slid to that direction. But there's something innate about us, right? Of who you are as a person, your belief systems, your personal talent and comfort zone, what gets you up in the morning. And if it's extremely different on there, I have not seen that change. And some really talented doctors. So I'm not saying they're not talented doctors that are doing amazing things. Our hospital's just likely not the right place for that individual.
Well, and just to kind of add on EQ, statistically, veterinary medicine is the lowest EQ. So it's not a
Yeah.
surprise that that people are not. But it's interesting because I find that veterinarians are more customer centric, but not very much team centric. That's where it's weird. I don't know if vets are that much of a trained to exist in the, because we go through so many years in training to become an individual contributor where you don't have the team interaction along the way and the training behind it. Then plugging in into the team and being the team player is sometimes a challenge for veterinarians. So I think that's just an observation that I think I have. I have a different question about the staffing. So de novo, right now in this
Yes.
environment where we don't have enough vets, are you finding that your model with this culture is attracting enough, and especially in such a high density area where you sort of compile your practices, are you finding enough attraction through your model to find the veterinarians, or are you going through the same trouble as everybody else these days hiring?
I should probably have some wood to knock on right now as I'm speaking on this.
Bring the wood in.
2022, we had an amazing success through this, and credit to my team, unbelievable team that does that, and a lot of it is internal referrals, classmates, former colleagues, bring them on, and so that has been the only way we've been able to do these openings and expansions and remodels that are happening. And we had tremendous success last year in bringing in doctors. And it really comes down to, obviously, competitive compensation is critical, but throwing money at the situation isn't the solution. It's really like, where are they coming in to work? What is that environment? What is that team around them? What is the positivity? Let them practice, mentor them, back to process. Like, I think there's an element of process, but there's also an element of, this is an art too, right? There's an art of medicine and enabling them to do that. But the biggest thing is feeling support. We're in this together. And like the 3 doctors we hired for Island Animal Hospital, I'm so proud of them. And watching them last night at the open house, watching them interact, the high fives that were going around, watching them do the ribbon cutting for the Chamber of Commerce, and the pride they have in this new hospital that's theirs. Like, they feel this sense of, this is my baby. And you can see it just elude across them. Extremely talented doctors, experienced, 100% great surgeons, great medicine. They do wonderful things. But the sense of pride into this hospital, part of that comes, they're beautiful, right? They don't smell. They have really high end, flooring, great exam rooms, really comfortable for the team as well as for that. Like, what is that work environment like? It has to start there a little bit, but it really comes down to, like, what is that culture like? And then how do we support them through that? Because this is the greatest profession in the world, but there are hard days. And so how do we support them, recognize that? Sometimes it's a hug, sometimes it's a high five. How do you approach that individual? But that culture, and really that's the fundamental principle of Cara, is be the place everybody wants to work. And we're not there yet, right? But how do we progress through that and continue to evolve to that? Because that's what makes a successful hospital. It's the people. How do we attract that talent again? We've had great success. We have pretty aggressive goals again this year for hiring, but it's really about creating that environment and that sense of ownership for the team.
Peter, so fascinating to hear what you guys are doing at Cara Veterinary. Inspiring, and I think a lot of it comes down to you, because you can tell, you can feel the passion when you speak about the work that you guys are doing. Thanks for sharing it. Hopefully our listeners are going to get something out of it, and we're going to see a lot more people trying to hire people out of the hospitality industry. I wouldn't be surprised. We blew through the time. We like to end the same way. We got a couple questions for you. A book recommendation, something that inspired you on your journey as a leader.
Yeah, the book I'm actually currently reading, which I find fascinating, and it's outside the vet industry, but it's called Master Mentors. I don't have the author right in front of me here, but there's been a lot of learnings through how different leaders in this industry have been mentored through. And so I'm almost finished with it, but I found that as a fascinating current book that I'm reading.
And the second question that we usually ask, do you know anybody in the industry that you think would be a good guest on this show?
A friend of mine also learned a tremendous amount through time with him, and he approaches veterinary medicine from a business accounting standpoint, but there's a lot of innovation on how he looks at us as an industry. He's also passionate about the industry, is Fritz Wood. And I'm not sure if you've ever spoken to Fritz. Wonderful person, very entertaining to talk to, but as a CPA, how he views an industry that he's been involved with for decades, I think he'd be fascinating. I hope he's okay with me recommending him. But
we'll find out.
Yeah. I would certainly enjoy listening to Fritz and on a variety of different subjects, but how he looks at business, because ultimately we are a business, but how that integrates with what makes veterinary medicine special.
Thank you so much for listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. If you want to hear about our new episodes, please follow us on any social media channel. Also, you can check out our website at veterinaryin.podcast.com. See you next week.